A middle-aged homeless man is found dead at a London bus stop. Many people have come here today to pay their respects and to see just what it is that they can actually do as a legacy for the man named Musa. I spoke with John Glackin. To get hold of, and we know you're working very, very hard, having put it on the streets. Now, it's Streets Kitchen, and where are you located?
We're located at clues in the name. We're located on the streets. That's where we operate. We don't work indoors, we work out on the streets. We feed people, bring essential supplies, whatever. That's across London, the Camden, Hackney, Shoreditch, Clapham, all the places I just can't remember offhand.
But you've helped many, many people. I mean, you've got a centre that was up on Seven Sisters Road, haven't you?
Yes.
How does that go?
It's now closed because it was only temporary use, but building-wise we've got, we're working with the Outside Project and quite a number of groups, lesbians, gays, sport migrants, Museum of Homelessness, Queerseum in Clerkenwell Fire Station, where upstairs is the first LGBTQI shelter. In 2019, first queer shelter has been opened in London. You know,
it took that long, John.
It took that long, you know what I mean? So fair play to Caroline that they're smashing in there, the Outside Project. And we're downstairs, we're going to try and get a day centre thing going with a lot of different groups. We'll also be opening the winter shelter again this year. It's on Hornsey Road. We opened it last year, and that was we worked with Haringey Council, we worked with Islington Council, or Camden Council. This year we're going to work with Haringey instead of Camden, because it's much easier and a better relationship, where we hosted 14 people a night. By the sound of things, Mr. Glanville from Hackney Council is going to speak to us next week about empty buildings in Hackney, because that's what we're saying to people, there's empty buildings, we can put those to use immediately. When you look at Hackney, they're actually paying people to provide security for the buildings. It's costing them money to have empty buildings, whereas we can go in there, provide a service, and try and save people from dying. Like we're here today because our friend Musa has passed away. I mean, that shouldn't be happening in this day and age. When somebody lay there for months and months and months and not, I don't know what outreach did, and there will be a review. I hope it's a public review, and we'll find out, but there's no need for that, you know what I mean? That's why we need Streets Kitchens, and all the grassroots groups have actually got that connection with the streets.
Other people who I know who saw him and would like to say something, we really encourage you to speak today, because then we get to know him as a human, we get to know him as a person. I know that a lot of you interacted with him, I myself did. We miss him. It sounds ridiculous, but we come to the bus stop and we miss him. But we failed him. Unless we accept that, we could have done more, collectively.
I called up, I think it was City Links or one of them home shelters, yes, and the person on the other end called me back and said they're aware about this person. So many people tried to help him, but I think what it boiled down to, he just loved the streets.
I hope Musa can look back and see how it's loved.
This man was lying on a hard floor for weeks and weeks and weeks, and thousands of people rang Hackney Council. They should have thought of pressure sore. They should have known that. How can he not develop pressure sore on a hard floor when people lie in the hospital for a week or a few days and they end up developing pressure sore? They should have done something. Given all the people that rang them, they were telling them, we know about it, we know about it. It takes a day to get 2 or 3 phone calls, council to come out here and say to him, we're going to take you because he doesn't have capacity. It is for at his own best interest. That's why they have to do whatever they do.
This guy, he was an amazing guy. This guy really, yeah. He was a really good guy. And the first time like I came across this guy, I see the guy always at the bus stop, you know, and he had loads of food there, and I never used to see him eating. I never used to see him like moving or nothing. Humble guy, do you know what I'm saying? And he amazed me by that.
Baz, thanks for joining us. Obviously, you're very local to the area, and you seem to know quite a bit about what was actually going on. Yeah. You're engaging with a lot of people who had come today to remember Musa, who sadly passed away. Yeah. Could you tell us, more than anything, what your feelings are about the fact he's actually passed away, first of all?
Sure. I had no intentions to speak nor say anything. This gentleman, for the last several months, we've known him locally, here in my father's shop. He's come in a few times. He did speak very little English, but he can communicate. We obviously felt sad for him, like any human, any creature would. But once we realised he died, all the emotions, all the experience you've had with him, all the feelings as a normal person you would have on another human being, just arise. And I had no intentions, as I said, to speak. But when I was there lighting the candles and realizing the amount of awareness that's happened and the amount of people that came to the memorial, that without my own control made me speak and express all the anguish you have about what you see in society today.
Well, there are clearly problems if people are dying on the streets. This is the sort of thing we hear about in the third world, but clearly it's happening way across our cities, across the UK, and London's no exception.
Yeah.
So, in terms of something being able to be done about this,
Yes.
where do you think the public would stand? People who are minded to do something about it, where would they stand with this?
Well, most of us are quite, intelligent and observant of the world to realise places like Norway, Switzerland, Netherlands, Finland, all these places, the way they deal with their society, the process they have of caring for their citizens is a process that works. Works most of the time, or should I say 90% of the time. And when you see this from them, surely it's a lesson learned. And knowing our economy was much greater, better than anyone's before any of them started, and now they are in the position that they are in, and yet we have come to the low position that we've put ourselves, is a big shame on us. It's an embarrassment.
So whilst we have the financial high ground, we don't have the moral high ground?
Sadly not. Our emphasis, our target in life seems to be each to their own. One group runs for one set of goals and ideals, while the other stays stagnant and lost within the society. And that's either let's be honest and say this is the way we want the process and the life of the system of our country and citizens to be, or let's do something about it.
Hi Gary, tell me, what's your story and what does this mean to you?
I was out there for 28 years, on and off, sleeping in all of the cities around the country, London. But I mean, this problem, Musa, I didn't know Musa, my brother, pretty dear brother. My concern is I wanted to come up, show me about from rough sleepers out and about. So I do work with a crowd called Museum of Homelessness. We have got an exhibition down at St Martin's. It's about rough sleeping.
Right. Okay, so Gary, what you're saying is there is an organisation and it's called the Museum of
We don't get any
Homeless.
funding.
You don't get any funding? How is it funded? Is it charitable handouts or how does it get funded?
Turning Point are funding us. So.
Right, so you've got one funder, okay.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the Museum of Homeless?
It's to raise the profile. So we've got right now, at this moment in time, we've got an exhibition down at St Martin's in the Field.
Can get help. It's not like a country like Manila or maybe sort of Somalia in the bad old days where you can't get help.
So
it's a very hard nut. It's a very strange one, but I don't think it's about homelessness. I think it's about mental illness and the Tories cutting stuff and mentally ill people left on the streets. So I think it's more about, so it's like a pyramid, isn't it? It's not like who's homeless. If you're sleeping on a bus stop for all your life, well, most of your life, or the last 6 months, you're mentally ill, because no one wants to do that. So it's about mental illness, I think. And then that leads to lots of things, drug addiction, maybe alcoholism, homelessness. And, so I think the top of the pyramid is mental illness, and it all filters down to that.
The concern that we have is really to do with, mental health services. This is really kind of the top level issue. And our personal experience is that my partner's brother has been diagnosed with psychosis. He was sectioned for a short period of time. Very much like Musa, he didn't want help, but he didn't have the mental capacity to sort of receive help. So we did have an intervention with the health services. They came and tried to administer him medication. he disappeared for a few weeks, and then no one ever bothered. They came back, found out he'd left, and then no one ever bothered to follow up to see what had happened to him. So it's not just about, like, we understand there's a difficulty with, whether or not someone can be sectioned against their will or sectioned, having to diagnose them first. But in this particular instance, he was diagnosed, he was treated, he was sectioned. He'd escaped a couple of times. They brought him back, but they didn't really follow up. This is the thing, there's no one's followed up with him. And when they did come to sort of administer the medication, with, a couple of weeks in a row, they weren't really, it was just a very clinical process. They were there to just sort of like tick a box. They asked a few questions and they left. So I feel like, we can all argue about, okay, well, the councils, they can only do so much, but actually they could probably do a lot more with just generally making sure people are okay when they know they're not okay.
Do you feel essentially that they ducked the issue a little bit there?
I think they're stretched. I mean, we know austerity has had a massive, impact, especially in councils like this. And his council, he's based in Enfield. So I do think it's to do with the fact that people are stretched, and you can clearly see that the people who are, dealing with this are quite, deflated, and they have issues. But then there's also a part of them, I think, they're not really trained up to do it properly. The people that came to kind of ask them the questions, they were really cold.
So we're lacking resources, there's lacking training.
I think lack of resources,
direction.
lack of training. I don't think the people that are doing these kind of home visits or even just like checking in are really properly trained counselors. They didn't feel like they were experienced.
Can I ask you a question? What are you signing today?
I'm signing, I'm trying to put this into words and into a short paragraph to say, I think we need to look beyond just, okay, let's set up a soup kitchen, or let's, try to get him off the streets. It's not about necessarily, he might want to go back on the streets. It's about from the top figuring out how we can get more services for people with mental health and how to sort of infiltrate ways to get them to be helped and to follow up, really. That's the most important thing.
Baz, as a final note to this, I mean, what could you say?
No more deaths in our streets.
Be here for the homeless. Be here for those in need. Be here for those who don't have any. Thank you. On our streets, no more death or poverty. No more death on our streets. No more death or misery. We don't want to live inside a cage no more. We don't want to have to suffer just because we're poor. Everybody has the right to live in peace. We don't want to have to die upon these streets. No more death on our streets. No more death or poverty. No more death on our streets. No more death or misery. You cannot imagine how the homeless feel, shivering in winter time without a decent meal. We are headed back into a darker time. Now they're turning homelessness into a crime. No more death on our streets. No more death or poverty. No more death on our streets. No more death or misery. Had enough, sleeping rough, but no one seems to know how tough the life has been, because they do not know love. Reality upon the streets, it isn't quite the way it seems. The guarantee to get the lead move you on. No more death on our streets. No more death or poverty. streets.